Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip, and sitting in for Jeff tonight is guest co-host Matt Hamilton. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Chip.
Good to have you here. So today we're going to get into, there's been a crazy stuff going on today. I know scam, bank run, fraud has been running his mouth all over the place, but we're going to talk about some really positive stuff tonight. We're going to talk about the future of crypto. Where are we heading? Let's talk about use cases. Let's talk about building. Let's talk about what's ahead, because the future's pretty bright. You got to put on your shades. And you guys ready to do this? You ready, Matt?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
So welcome to On the Chain. It's good to have you back on the show, better in the capacity of a co-host. And so you just got back to Barbados today, right?
I did. I've been on like an epic voyage. So I was in Lisbon for 2 weeks for a whole bunch of protocol lab stuff, Filecoin stuff that was going on. We can talk about that in a bit. But there was like an epic, fantastic 2 weeks in Lisbon at a whole bunch of events. And then I went to the UK to pick up my dog that I've been trying to get to Barbados for like the past year. And then went on the Queen Mary 2 ocean liner, across the Atlantic, like for a week to get to New York, and then rented a car and drove from New York up to Toronto, or near Toronto, and then like a week dealing with paperwork shit in Canada, and then flew from Toronto to Barbados. Arrived yesterday. So so I've been away for like five weeks between work.
How was the QE2? How was that coming over?
Cool. Queen Mary 2, QM2.
The QM2. Yeah, right on. Yeah.
That was awesome. I mean, it was kind of weird because it's like I was going to get from A to B, right? My dog is half pug, and airlines won't fly dogs with squish noses, right? Because of breathing
issues. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Now, ironically, her nose is not very much like a pug's. It's more like a Bichon. She's half pug, half Bichon, and it's more like a Bichon. But anyway, the airlines won't fly her, right? So I found out that the Queen Mary 2 has kennels on board for the transatlantic bit.
All right.
The ironic thing being is after New York, it then heads south and goes down to the Caribbean and ends up in Barbados. And it arrived in Barbados like the day before I did, right? But they don't run the kennels on that section. So I had to get off at New York. But it was kind of weird because there's people that were going like, oh, this is my dream cruise, and there's a lot of older people, right?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, yeah, well, cruises always are, but this is like 10 years older than your average cruise anyway, because this is like, real old school kind of thing, right? Whereas I'm kind of like, I just want to get from A to B, right? So it's kind of a bit of a weird thing. But I took my suit along, and I got suited up and went to the grand formal dinners in the evening for a few nights, and it was pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Played it up pretty nice. Probably met some interesting people.
Yeah.
Did anybody say like, so what do you do, Matt? I mean, like, so what everyone's like sitting around, maybe everybody's retired, but like, Matt, what are you up to? Like, what do you tell them, and like, how do they respond to it?
So, well, I generally say that the short answer is IT, and I say there's a longer answer if you want to know it, right? Because it's like if you launch directly into kind of I help teach developers how to build on a decentralized storage network powered by cryptocurrency. The vast majority, exactly, right? It's like a straight over their face, or their eyes just glaze over, or whatever, right? So I generally just start with I work in IT, and then if they say, oh, okay, what do you do? Then I tell them, I say I'm a developer advocate. I help teach developers how to build things. So I'm a developer myself, but I also act in the capacity as a teacher and a mentor and an instructor, content creator, and specifically working at the moment with protocol labs and Filecoin and a decentralized storage network that allows you to store data more securely around the world. That's the elevator pitch.
And that right there, I think the storage is going to become even more vital, especially with all the breaches we have, and just the whole idea of secure data. That's almost like an oxymoron these days. Like, how secure really is it, and who has access to it? And that's the thing with anything centralized, right? Centralized servers, I don't care. It's AWS, like distributed. They can
Right.
call it anything they want. They can call it distributed computing, but it's really centralized, right? It's basically, even if it's distributed, it's in like one area, and
Yeah.
somebody has access to it, right?
Yeah, and if you hear, so the CEO of Protocol Labs, a guy called Juan Bennett, he's does a fantastic kind of like big picture talk about, you know, how like information is vital to society these days, right? We live in an information age, and you need to be able to store and disseminate information. And you know, one of the big projects that Protocol Labs was working on, and still is, you know, very much, you know, involved is IPFS, the Interplanetary File System. Now, a lot of people know IPFS via like NFTs at the moment, because IPFS is a great means for storing data for NFTs. And you know, they did things like, when I think it was Turkey shut off access to Wikipedia, they hosted a copy of Wikipedia on IPFS so that everybody could still access it, right? And so that's kind of where it starts to get like really into the society's type of things, is when you're talking about like, you know, censorship of data, censorship of information, access freedom, you know, free access to information, and that kind of thing. Yeah, that's where the kind of the technology and the policy and the society stuff kind of meet, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's really the evolute. What it's kind of like what's next, right? I want to segue a little bit here because I wanted to show this, because I thought this was, I want to make sure I get to this. But so Siamak Masnavi put this
Yeah.
up. Matt Hamilton on the source of most disinformation spread about XRP. We talked about this the other night, but this was really comes back to like the early Bitcoin days,
Yeah.
when you could basically, what was it? What was the crux of this?
You could get paid. Somebody was DMing. So there's a forum called Bitcoin Talk. It's like the earliest forum for like crypto stuff and Bitcoin stuff, right? And on Bitcoin Talk, somebody was DMing people saying, I will pay you 5 Bitcoin, which at the time was probably like $5, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'll pay you 5 Bitcoin to say that Ripple and XRP are a centralized scam. And I think that is kind of really the source of where most of the disinformation is you know, comes from regarding XRP. It's like, yeah, I work for Protocol Labs and doing stuff for Filecoin now, but most people on here will know me from XRP, and you know, I've been involved in the XRP community for like 5 years, and previously worked at Ripple for a bit and that kind of stuff. So you know, I'm still heavily involved in that, and there's been a few.
So I mean, like, yeah, and this,
Right.
they pulled this from the forum right there. Ripple's a scam, get rich, it's centralized, akin to PayPal rather than Bitcoin. Yeah, okay. For more info, visit ripplescam.org. I guess that was the thing at one point. I don't think it's still live, but apparently that was something. So, and then this was, so this got even like funnier, because Crypto Eddie jumped in there and she says, you know, hands down, hammer toe, obviously your Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Matt is my number one draft pick. Number one draft pick, obviously, you know, a sports analogy, saying that if I had to take that first, but of course you heard, I read that as my number one draft prick. Okay.
My number one daft prick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, daft prick, right? So a daft prick, or yeah, that's what you said. So that was funny. And then, you know, we had other people like Ally Network say, yeah, I was wondering why Eddie was tweeting out of character. I actually took a second look at that. I was like, I had to like do a kind of a double glance. And so there was,
at first I saw that from Ari. I was like, what the hell? And then I realized that I'd misread it, right? And then all I could think of was like Bex XRP, who you know, Grand Organics, who's, you know, she had a like NFT thing of, you know, like anamorphic penises or whatever. I thought, you know, is this some extra like NFT collection that somebody's doing called, you know, Daft Pricks?
Well, that's not a bad. You know, someone has to create that now. I mean, we have to get there. We have to get there for that.
Actually, I've got a colleague at Protocol Labs called Dawn, and I think Dawn is involved, or it was involved in a project with something, a similar kind of name. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like Little Pricks or Daft Pricks or something that she was involved with, if I remember rightly.
I'll say that after a few, and then so everybody just laughed. Kumaran's on here. You got Dirk from obviously one of the founders over there at Xpector, a really cool project. What are your thoughts about Xpector? That's an incredible project, no?
I mean, the artwork is pretty amazing, actually. Some of the stuff that they've done and the likenesses are pretty cool. I don't know a huge amount about it. What's going on. Dirk seems to be a very interesting character, but I haven't like kind of dug into it particularly deeply.
Yeah, they're going to have a. I know. Actually, I'm going to be down at Art Basel, which is a big. It's an annual event that happens in December here, and I know there's going to be a bunch of people. There's probably be a bunch of people from the community down there. I know Expector is going to be down there as well. But look at this over here. So this is Hussein Barakachani says blockchain technologies being applied to decentralizing cloud computation, storage, and networks. One of the most powerful use cases we have for this technology. How long before it's mainstream? Thank you for that, Hussein. Appreciate it. Good question. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, blockchain's kind of finding its way into all of these kind of areas, and I think that this is, the theme of what we're talking about tonight, right? Is kind of real world usage and building and that kind of thing. And what's interesting is kind of similar to, I mean, he mentioned storage here, and that's what Filecoin's evolved with decentralized cloud computing for a while. As you know, I came on here and I talked a bit about Bittensor that I was working with. They're doing like decentralized AI, and it's a reasonably common pattern that projects are doing now, in that they're using cryptocurrencies to create some kind of marketplace around buying and selling a resource, or offering and loaning and renting, or whatever it might be, but a cryptocurrency powered marketplace. And that's kind of what Filecoin is, right? Because originally there was IPFS. IPFS is like 7 or 8 years old, and it's decentralized storage. But why should you, Chip, be storing my data, right? You've got no incentive to store my data. And then the idea behind Filecoin it gave an incentive, it gave a marketplace, because it allowed me to be able to pay you to store my data, right? And you and all the other what are called storage providers can effectively bid prices, and I can kind of go in and say, okay, yeah, I want you or you to store the data, right, based on the price. And it allows you to create these marketplaces where you can kind of where that's not really been possible before. And whether that's around storage, whether it's around computation, you're seeing it around. So there was Helium. I'm not quite sure how well Helium's doing now, but Helium was around networks. There's a fantastic project called WeatherXM that's doing it with weather stations, right? You can actually buy a weather station and run it locally and collect weather data, and you're actually paid via cryptocurrency for the data that your weather station is collecting and serving up to the world, right?
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is WeatherXM. It's really cool. I want to actually get one of their stations and run it here, because there's not
Hive. The other one is Hive mapping. So Hive mapping, where you're able to create basically do a different kind of a map, right? So it's kind of crowdsourcing, where you put this this mapper in your car, and it's got a little there's an incentive to. I think that's pretty interesting too. So it is great to kind of see how that's all this stuff's finding its way into mainstream. And really what it comes down to is what is use cases, right? I mean, solving a particular problem. You talk about weather, you talk about mapping, you talk about that next generation, that next evolution of what that looks like, whether it's file storage, and a lot of folks here obviously on the chain, very interested in kind of what's going on in the with Ripple and XRP. You got this lawsuit. You've got this Sam Bankman-Fried, who I don't know. He's he's blabbing his mouth, and everyone's telling him to shut up. It seems like the true sign of a sociopath, right? I mean,
it's weird. I'm trying to work out whether he is actually a sociopath, or whether there's just like a connection just not being made there somewhere in his brain, right? There's just something there that just is not quite clicking with him, and I don't know. I mean, because there's got to be, like you said, there's got to be a whole series of lawyers there with their heads in their hands, going, just come on, man, shut up, right? And he's talking away, and he's like kind of. But the weird thing, he's like saying more that's incriminating him than that's actually useful, but he's talking without actually, there's not much useful coming out of it from what he seems to be saying, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like, it's so odd, and it's cult of personality, where you have to say, you're trying to figure out, where do I put this, right? And I think your explanation is a good one. It's like, okay, is he a sociopath, or does he just not know? Does he not know that he doesn't know? will he be the last one to know? Do we all know and he's just trying to figure it out? Or is he a masterful con? It's kind of hard to really know what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, and I said this on another, I think it was on a Twitter space the other day that I joined, and it was, I kind of said that I was wondering whether how much of this was actually intentional on his part, right? I'm not trying to excuse what he did or anything, but it's just kind of like there's a little bit of it that makes me think. I think he just did a little bit and then did a little bit more and just kept doing a little bit more and didn't kind of like really look back and realize quite like how far he'd gone with this stuff, right? And now you like he had unimaginable amounts of wealth, imaginary, real, whatever it might be, right? But we're talking billions here, right? Figures that are just like beyond the comprehension of you and I, right? In terms of, what happens, Chip, if you suddenly had $1 billion turn up in your lap tomorrow, right? I mean, how are we going to react? And if it kind of came from nothing, then, what is it? How does it? What value is it to you, right? It's kind of like my crypto investments, like. I've only invested a small amount of money in crypto, and everything I've got has been as a result of like kind of trading it up, right?
Right on, right.
And it's sort of like, well, easy come, easy go. Now, because I never really bought it to start with, it enables me to kind of think a bit more freely about it and take bigger risks because, well, if it goes, it goes. I never had it, so it goes away again, right? It's kind of like Mickey Mouse money. In that sense.
Yeah, it's like house money. You're just playing with house money, and if it goes, what are you gonna do?
Exactly, right? I traded some up, and then I lose some. Oh well, I'm back to where I started, right? So I'm kind of wondering if there's an element of that to it. That it's kind of like these billions of dollars kind of turned up sort of out of nowhere pretty quickly, right? Through exchange fees and trading fees predominantly, I presume. That just kind of turned up, and then there's a bit of a shell game going on with some of it being passed around. And okay, that bit you've got to think, okay, he must have known that something was a bit suspect that he was doing there. But I think it's just kind of like you end up with this huge amount of money that's kind of not really real, and so maybe you're making decisions that are not really real, and you don't really understand that they've got consequences because you're kind of in this imaginary world. Like I said, I'm not trying to excuse what he did. I'm amazed that he's not behind bars now, right? And that in and of itself is a whole other kind of story, right? As to why is this guy not being locked up when, you've got people like Ross Ulrich, still behind bars and, for far less, right? And it's like, what the hell's going on there? So.
Exactly. So GDLT says Coinbase is next. And then we have Oz Crypto, another content creator. He says, I think he's just an idiot. So there you go. It's just
and that's probably a concise version of what I'm saying, right?
And
I'm not trying to say he's innocent, but
right.
I'm kind of almost inclined to say that there's more of an idiotness to it than a malice to it, right? I'm not saying that everything wasn't without malice, but I think he was just playing fast and loose and just kind of just one step and then another step and then another step and another step, and suddenly you turn around and you're like, holy shit, right?
Yeah, like whoops, what happened? And in the tech world, we call that an ID 10T error,
right?
which is a little bit more of the same thing. We had let's see, another one. Alchemist says, privileged kid, privileged life, never had to account, always taken care of. The BitBoy stakeout has him shook.
Yeah, and it could well be that, right? And that if you've kind of, yes, you've lived this privileged life, and like I said, he's been living in a house with a bunch of housemates,
soiree or whatever that is,
right? And he's been in this kind of like college dorm situation, right? I mean, he's a young guy anyway, right? But he's been
29.
in this college
I mean,
well, okay,
30.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Not
but
that young.
he's been for the past. I mean, how long's FTX been going? 5 years.
2019. 2019. It came out of nowhere. 2019, 2020. It's pretty fast. Pretty fast growth.
Yeah. I remember because the first I heard about it was that I can't remember his name now. Australian guy that
was it Oz Crypto? No. Who was it? You're talking about the Lark guy?
No. He used to be a pharmacist, and then he got into crypto. He was trading, and he was shilling FTX for a while, and then he suddenly disappeared. He got himself in financial trouble and disappeared.
Right on.
His name now.
Was that Kevin
anyway,
O'Leary? No.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That's a weird one too, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I don't
Bizarre.
really know the guy or what he does. It was Shark Tank, isn't
Well,
it? He does,
yeah.
but
What's
it's
the
kind
funny thing about that was I applied to Shark Tank with the startup. I got accepted. I had the producers call me. I'm probably going to get this up wrong, but the application is either 58 or 62 pages long, and it's insanely bizarre. Filled all
right.
that out, did all the stuff, did all the pre-interviews, didn't make it to New York. And what they did tell me was when you make it to New York, there may be, or wherever they filmed it in New York or LA, wherever it was. When you go sit there, you're there for the whole week, and they will say, okay, all right, come on. And like they send you to the studio because you're like in an apartment or something. They get you to the studio and you're on, and then you might go 45, 50 minutes, and then they knock it down to a 6 to 7 minute, 4 minute segment. And they said, well, here's the downside. The caveat is you may not be called. You may be going there and just have a free week vacation. Like,
wow.
how insane is that? It's like you go, you don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to put this up. So this one here from Colin Benson, he says, Matt, how can Ripple ever settle with the SEC when they can't provide clarity, or am I daft?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. This is what Brad Garlinghouse has said, right? He said that there's no way we would settle unless there was clarity, right? And I guess the question is, what does clarity mean? And this is what makes a mockery of it even more at the moment. Is kind of people are saying, well, they, the SEC met with FTX several times, and there was all these diary entries in whoever it was Gensler's diary for meeting with the SBF and that, and kind of they didn't see anything. And this is the thing that kind of amazes me is the number of companies that didn't spot anything, right? Because now it's the covers have been pulled off, and it's kind of like seemed to be no real like accounting or financial management or anything going on, and you kind of think, did nobody notice this? And you kind of think maybe it's the sort of the emperor's new clothes type thing, right? That everybody just says, oh, this guy's a child genius, and when this weird 20, 28, 29, 30-year-old kid with wiry hair and sneakers and turns up, that you kind of maybe you're just so shocked out of it that you think, oh, okay, well, he's got several billion, surely he must know what he's doing, right? And nobody actually bothered to check. Maybe that's what it was, right? So, but yeah, with Ripple and the SEC, I don't know. I guess it really depends on what happens with the SEC. I mean, I kind of it looks pretty positive for Ripple from where I'm sitting. What's going to be the end result to the SEC? They've never really lost a case, have they? In big terms, would this end up?
Oh, they have, yeah. They lose a lot of cases. They actually lose probably 1 out of 3.
Do they? But
They
not
actually do.
not to this scale though, right?
Maybe not to the scale, but they have lost some pretty big cases before. Remember, Mark Cuban battled him for 7 years. He won. Elon Musk also battled him. He won. So those were high profile cases. Where,
yeah. All right, okay. Not within crypto. I mean, right?
Well, within crypto, right? Crypto's
yeah.
a whole new frontier, right? That's the thing.
And that's kind of where I was going with this. Is it does it end up with a situation where the SEC kind of lose their their kind of remit over crypto, what remit they think they have over crypto, as a result of this, right? They could lose quite hard in terms of crypto at the end of this. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I think Oz this is kind of like what you were saying. Look, Bankman-Fried's net worth peaked at 26 billion. He's 30 years old. It's bound to throw you for a loop. You're right. I mean, It's like, how do you even comprehend a billion versus 26 billion on paper?
Exactly, and that's I can't remember what the stat is. Somebody kind of illustrated it nice way and say I can't remember what it is. Like a million seconds is whatever, like 30 days. A billion seconds is like 30 years, right? I mean, I can't remember the exact numbers. Somebody else can look them up, but it's kind of that's the sort of order of magnitude. A billion is just kind of this. It's a sort of it's an uncomprehendable number, right? So. It's going to throw you for a loop. Nuggets news. Yeah. Somebody's mentioned in the chat Nuggets news. That's the guy I was.
Nuggets news. Yeah,
like,
you can always rely on the chat. They always know. You'd be like the most obscure thing, and they'll figure it out right here. I want to put this one up by Eric. He says the reason that SBF is not behind bars is because he has a divine shield around him. He donated so much money, and it gave him immunity. So
Yeah, yeah. Whether it's the money he donated or whether it's connections and parents and all that kind of stuff, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly it's like the absence of action against him is notably conspicuous, right? Isn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
that's the amazing thing is that you see all these puff pieces being written about him and the
Puff
fact that
pieces. Yeah.
he's appearing, to go and talk at events, and it's kind of like shit. Why are you not behind bars now?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, my favorite one, Matt, was the one where they said, like, it's kind of like it's kind of like this. Well, it's tragic that Sam Bankman-Fried didn't succeed because he was about to save the entire world with his philanthropy. I'm like, yeah, well, whose money was it? It's like it was so funny because that story broke on like a weekday, Thursday. By the next day, I saw somebody outside their condo in Miami looking at what was, and I'll call it the Miami Arena. It was called the FTX Arena, and they already had half of the sign on the roof dismantled. It was just like that.
Yeah. Okay. So remember, we were just talking just before we came on that it's literally a year ago since we met in person.
Right.
There's that Ripple. There was the XRP meetup event in Miami, and I was in Miami for like less than 48 hours. I had it because remember we were driving around trying to find a testing place because I needed to get a test to go back, and I had like less time than the test takes to complete, and we found some rapid place anyway. By the time I got to Barbados, they didn't even accept the damn test anyway after all of that, right? The $300 I paid for the test, and they said no, we don't accept rapid PCR tests, which are supposedly different to other PCR tests, but whatever.
I remember Jeff and I were in a parking lot, we're sitting in his truck, and then you're running out, and then like we're in the back of the parking lot, we're like, where's Matt? And like we think he's getting the test and we don't know, and then we picked you up from your hotel. But that was like a really fun time. And then we went over to Lincoln Road, and if you guys don't know, like Lincoln Road in South Beach, it's closed off, so it's just really walking. So there's no cars that drive up and down it, but Lincoln Road's it's right by the convention center, which is where this event's happening right now, tomorrow, Friday, and then Saturday, the Art Basel show.
Yeah, and I walked past the FTX arena when I was in
Right.
That's where I was going with this thing. Is I was going to say I walked past a year ago the FTX arena, and I was like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive. They got that signed, and there's part of me thinking, when's Ripple going to get their name above an arena? Because that it sounds like quite a thing. I'm surprised that Ripple haven't done is stuck their name on some kind of event or something, right?
And that could be, but I mean, they might have ruined it for that because I think some of the other stadiums they did. Like they got a really good deal for the Miami one, and I think they paid like 4 times that for like out in California. They had sponsored one of these, but that time, I think it was around the 10th of December last year, so it's almost a year. We hung out. Yeah. We were drinking. What were we drinking? We were drinking some
mojitos, wasn't it?
Mojitos. We were drinking some pitchers of mojitos. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. Speaking of that, so Michael Murphy wants to know, Matt, which brand of beer do you drink?
So at the moment, I'm drinking Deputy, which is a Bajan beer. I live in Barbados, and it's actually Barbados's Independence Day. It's their 56th or 65th, I can't remember which it is. Independence Day today. It is also the first anniversary of Barbados becoming a republic. So it became a republic a year ago. And so yes, but I'm drinking Deputy.
What's your top 5? You had to say like you're going on holiday, you're going to bring the top 5 beers. You go into an island, so you bring the top 5 beers with you. What do those look like?
Well, this is the weird thing is that Deputy is a lager, and I don't normally drink. I never used to drink lagers in the UK, right? I used to drink bitters, ales, stouts. I was generally a more heavier, like a porter or an amber ale or something like that, right? When I used to live in many years ago, I lived in Albany, New York, and I used to drink Pete's Wicked. Was it Sam Adams?
Sam Adams, Sam Adams, the hazy beer.
Yeah, exactly. So that they Sam Adams, I always remember at Christmas they did like a 24, almost like an advent calendar
Christmas sale.
Yeah,
it was good.
Yeah, which was good. So yeah, I always like kind of generally darker, heavier beers. When I go places,
like a Sam Smith.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. But for some reason, I mean, maybe it's just the temperature here. Deputy or Banks. I mean, Deputy's by Banks. It's the same brewery here in Barbados. It does both Banks and Deputy. They're lager, but Deputy is a slightly lighter one. And I've kind of.
Plus, there's something great about drinking local beer, right? Wherever country you're in, it's just something about just drinking the local beer,
Although I was in, when I was in, I told you I was in Lisbon for 2 weeks, and I went and tried something. And I just looked down the menu, and I was like, well, that sounds like a local one. And what I didn't realize was I'd ordered a radler or shandy, which basically, beer plus lemonade.
Yeah, the shandies are
Like
good.
50-50 beer and lemonade. But I generally don't like things that are too sweet, and I'd ordered like a large, so like half a liter. So over a
Shandy's a
pint.
good lunch beer. Let's sort of a lunch treat right there.
Yeah,
You go
yeah,
in there.
yeah, yeah. So, but this was exceptionally sweet. So.
Legendary said SBF's going to make a great cellmate for Big Bubba. Okay. Oz Crypto says, his nan used to always say stupid people are always happier because they don't have to think about actions or consequences.
Oh yeah.
Kind of explains why SBF is so happy while being miserable as F. So there you go.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, it's like, I don't, he's obviously a smart guy, kind of technically. I don't think he's stupid as such, but I think he's definitely, he seems to very much be on the autism spectrum, and he's seems to be a little
Listen,
bit
you've heard it here first.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, hey, I think we all are to a certain degree. I mean, I'm sure I am.
I am, yeah, for a big degree.
But he's maybe a little further along, shall we say? And I think he's, there seems to be a disconnect, right? When you see him talk and that, you can tell he's a smart guy, but there's I think a disconnect with reality there, and so I think that's what's kind of got him into trouble. That he's just been thinking, hey, I'm doing this cool stuff, and maybe not kind of like realized exactly what was going on all around him.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you think about all my buddies in the UK were telling me that we're talking about the World Cup. They were like, well, how many goals is England going to score against the US team? Will it be 4? Will it be 5? Let's see, they beat Iran 6-2. Maybe it'll be 7. Maybe it'll be 8. And they played to a draw, and I think that surprised a lot of people. Did that surprise you a little bit?
I'm not a big football fan, so I wasn't following it.
All right, you got to leave. That's it. We got to get.
Yeah, I'm out. Sorry, bye. But I mean, it did surprise me. It did surprise me that the score, was that. But I mean, what was funny
surprised.
was
That's shocking. Wait a minute. You hail from you hail from the UK, but you're not a football fan. It's funny. I got a good buddy. I have a good buddy there, which you guys have gotten into it before. I won't say his name, but you know who I'm talking about, and he's not a football fan either. But he was like blowing up my phone and saying, like, "Are you watching this shit?" It was what he was saying. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm watching it." Tell me again how many goals you're going to score. So
I don't drink tea either.
Oh, okay. Wow, this is weird. Okay, so you really misplaced. So you really belong in Albany, New York, really, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So let's look at this right here. Sir John Volkanek says, please, Matt, as an ex-Ripple intern. Well, he's not an intern. He's an ex-Ripple employee.
He's taking a piss. I know, Sri.
I know he is, but I'm just, but people listening don't know that.
Yeah.
Can you for once and for all explain to the people who don't know how things work that there is no parallel to the XRP ledger?
Yeah. So there's this meme that's been going on for a long time about a private ledger with some mystical XRP that is valued some high value, perhaps $589 or whatever it is. I think it's gone up now. It's like tens of thousands. People seem to be talking about that. Some mystical XRP that is not for ordinary plebs like you or I, Chip, but for the elite lizard people, whatever that are running the world, right? And there's this secret ledger and that, and it's complete nonsense on several kind of levels. So one is the way in which prices work, and the way in which, so you've got technically hundreds of private ledgers out there, because every single centralized exchange is a private ledger, right? In and of itself. It doesn't run XRP ledger software, but it is a private ledger, right? Now, whether that's Coinbase or Binance or Kraken or Gemini or whoever, I mean, half of those don't list XRP, but anyway, whichever these centralized exchanges are, they all have built in some kind of ledger that says Matt has this much XRP, Chip has this much XRP, right? And you can buy and sell on their exchange, and the price on one exchange will be slightly different to a price on another exchange, or slightly different to a price on the XRP ledger DEX or whatever. But they're kind of brought about in check by the act of arbitrage. And that is the fact that if there's a high price on one exchange, somebody will sell on that exchange and then take the asset to another exchange, or take the profit to another exchange and buy again back there, right? So if XRP is $1 on one exchange and I sell $100 worth of XRP, I have my $100. I take that to another exchange where it's 50 cents. And for that, I can buy 200 XRP. So I've turned my 100 XRP into 200 XRP by going between exchanges. But the act of doing that brings the prices back in line, right? By doing this arbitrage, you effectively equalize the prices between the two exchanges. And so the first few people that do this arbitrage may make some money, and then it kind of equalizes out over time. So you've got to be kind of quick on that. But that's what brings the prices in line. So this whole idea of some kind of private ledger that has some insanely high valued XRP on it just makes no sense, because say there's some XRP on there that's worth whatever, $1,000, right? Who's going to buy that XRP for $1,000? Because I can go buy XRP for 50 cents or for whatever it is, 40 cents right now somewhere else. So if I can buy it for 40 cents, why the hell am I going to buy it for $1,000? So if I'm not going to buy it for $1,000, somebody's not going to sell it for $1,000, right? Because in order to sell it for $1,000, you need to have somebody willing to buy it for $1,000.
Well, it's typical supply and demand, right? I mean, you know, it's
right.
what the going rate is. I mean, not necessarily what somebody wants for it. It's, you know, it's
right. And so typically that's never going to happen, because if I can buy it for 50 cents, I'm sure as hell not going to buy it for $1,000, right? Now, but even if I did, the fact that I start buying it for $1,000, you know, and then I've got this, well, I can buy all this other XRP for 50 cents and sell it on this private one for $1,000, means all the XRP I'm buying for 50 cents is going to drive the price up, and all the XRP I'm selling for $1,000 on this private one is going to bring the price down. And that's what arbitrage does, and it brings the prices in together. Now, the only reason why you have any significant like discrepancy between the prices is if there's some kind of blockage or reasoning why you can't move the asset backwards and forwards. Now, you may remember there used to be what was termed the kimchi premium, that the exchanges in Korea, the prices were generally like 20, 30% higher for crypto in Korea. Now, the reason for that being is that you or I couldn't get an account in Korea because we're not Korean citizens, right? And then once we sold our XRP for, say, Korean won and made a profit, well, what can we do with that Korean won? Right? We can't then do anything with it. We couldn't then move it. The cost to actually move it overseas would have canceled out that profit, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, this whole notion of a private ledger is just kind of nonsensical, because even if this private ledger does exist, and Ripple are working on this idea of sidechains, and, you know, they are working on this idea of private ledgers for you know, CBDCs and stuff. So I'm not saying that they don't exist in that regards, but there's not just some secret one with some massively high XRP on it, because, you know, if there was somebody willing to buy at that price, somebody would have sold it and the price would come down, and, you know, they would then go and, you know, make a profit elsewhere. So, you know, it's just kind of, yeah, it's just nonsensical, right? You know, even if it's, and people point to various things, they go, oh, I've seen something where the price was suddenly really high or whatever, right? Now, the price is whatever the last person sold it as. So I could sell one XRP to you, Chip, for $589, and that will record the price as being $589. Now, all I've done is sold one XRP for $589.
Right.
Now, everybody's going to look at that and go, oh, we can all sell for $589. Well, I'm only willing to sell one XRP for $589, not 10,000, right?
Right.
So you're not, you know, I've got no more to sell you, so you're not going to make any more off of me. But I can potentially, if we agreed to do that, we could potentially.
Well, you'd be making it off of me. It would be the other way around.
Right.
It would be
yeah.
So Mark Phillips is checking in. He says, you know, I always feel like my IQ goes up the minute I just start listening to Matt. So there you go. So that's and I think we all kind of feel that way. Sergio wants to know a question to Berserker. Can you follow Chip and Matt's rapping on your drums? Because Berserker is a drummer, and we've seen him in action before. So he's trying to see if we can like kind of, you know, hit.
So I used to play the drums as a kid for a little while, but I was rubbish at it. And my parents lived all over the world, and I went to a boarding school, and drums are not the most portable of instruments, right? So
easy to carry
and this
around,
was before the age of, you know, electric headsets and stuff like that. So you know, it was I didn't particularly do too well on it, but I can you know, still just about do a paradiddle. But yeah, I don't I'm described by my family as being as musical as a falling ton of bricks.
So it's not your, well, the good news is because you have that other masterful mind. Here's one by Lee Sands. He wants to know, XLM is as similar as it gets to a public versus a private ledger in XRP. Of course, he's making a little bit of fun there. I mean, not exactly what it is. Jeff Rome wants to know, or maybe it's Romy, he says, wants to know your thoughts on David Schwartz.
In any particular thing? So I worked at Ripple for a year, as you know, and I used to have I think it was a fortnightly, every 2 weeks, one-to-one with David Schwartz, or maybe it was monthly. I can't remember. He's a great guy. It's been interesting listening to some of his comments because he seems to be a little bit more freely speaking at the moment, shall we say, about things. And he's been really getting into the AI generative art and messing around with that. But I think he's kind of talking about everything kind of except XRP because of the SEC, because of the lawsuit and everything. And because, obviously him being a key part of Ripple, he's going to be involved in there and in that lawsuit and that. And so I think he's kind of occupying himself with talking about everything but, right, that he can do. So, but he's a clever guy. He's a nice guy.
Jeff wants to know David who? Of course, Matt's sitting in for Jeff's not able to be here today, but he is in the chat, which is really good.
I need a Jeff mask, don't I? I should have like a mask.
Put a little mask on. We could
put a shower cap on or something, right?
That would have been good. Yeah, nice little thing right there. So Colin Benson wants to know, why does it seem that XRP is the only one the price glitch? Because this has happened so many times on exchanges where for just a short period of time, and it seems to be the only one. Now, maybe it's not, but it'll go up to like over 1,000, USD and some crazy amounts of, or at least in the hundreds. Is there something, do you think there's a reason why that just glitches on XRP, or is that the only one we notice?
I think it's a combination of, it's the only one we notice because people are kind of looking at it for this glitch so hard, right? I think it's the only one we notice, but also because the XRP ledger has a DEX, it's possible to again do weird things with the DEX, right? I can create my own token, MAT token, and go and sell it for some huge amount of XRP. I can make an arbitrary price for it and buy and sell it, and do things like that can then potentially kind of leak back into potentially being a price of XRP, right? Because if I say that MAT token is worth $1,000 and I sell whatever, 1,000 XRP for one MAT token, then that means one XRP is technically worth $1 million, right? So I think it's some people screwing around on the DEX doing things, and certain websites that don't particularly check it kind of report some strange things. So a classic example is the old xrpcharts.ripple.com site, which has been around for ages. It's not actively maintained now, but people have worked out that there's various metrics on there that they can, put some weird orders on the DEX and kind of cause to come up with strange numbers. And I think that's partly an element to it as well, I think. Nice,
good answer. King Solomon in the house says, Matt, are the private ledgers actually federated sidechains?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's like I said, Ripple, make no secret about the fact that they have been working on, the whole reason for creating the sidechains system was to create effectively private ledgers. So I'm not saying they don't exist. As far as I'm aware, there aren't any in production at the moment. Ripple have been working on some with some of their CBDC customers, people like Palau, Bhutan, for example, they've been working with. As far as I'm aware, I don't think there's any in production. I mean, the sidechain code was still very much in development. I mean, at Apex, just when was that, 2 months ago? They kind of released, hey, here's the latest version of sidechains, and it's quite a bit different than the previous version that they were working on. So, none of that is really in production yet. But yeah, the idea is that there will be private ledgers that run on these federated sidechains. But again, the big thing with the federated sidechains is you can move XRP backwards and forwards between the sidechain and the main chain. And there's just no reason why the price would be, some stupidly high value on a sidechain when the whole point of the sidechain is you can easily move XRP then, and now with the new sidechain code, other tokens can cross the federator across onto the main chain as well. So there's nothing to kind of keep the price at any arbitrary level. When you can move it backwards and forwards to the main chain, you can buy and sell it on the DEX. So that's again, that's where your arbitrage is going to come from.
Right. Another benefit at sidechain is you can open and close it pretty, transactionally, right? So you could run it open for a little bit and then close it down. So it's not really. Is there any record of that? I mean, anywhere? Where is that stored?
No, that there isn't. I mean, you wouldn't even see it, right? The
Right.
the main XRP ledger has no real concept that a sidechain is even running.
Yeah.
All it would see would be a particular account seems to have a high level of traffic, so you could probably sniff them out, right? And find them. So short the FOMO and all the stuff that he's doing with like tracking ODL stuff and everything. No doubt he'd be able to find all of the what are called DOR, or what used to be called DOR accounts. So they've changed the name of them now. I can't remember what it's called now, but what are called DOR accounts, which were the kind of like the account that would custody the XRP on its way over to the side chain, right? So you would have an account on the main chain that holds all of the XRP that is effectively represented on the side chain. And so you'd be able to probably sniff those out via various heuristics and metrics and stuff to find them. But the XRP ledger itself has no kind of real notion of what a side chain is. As far as it's concerned, it's just a fairly busy account.
That's the brilliance of it, because you keep the XRPL clean, and that way you're not, because I think that's where a lot of projects go wrong. They try to be, master, what is that? How's that phrase go? They try to do it all, master of everything, master of none, whatever it is. But
yeah.
King Solomon says, private ledgers are federated sidechains. Thanks for that. That's what I thought. There's another comment in here I wanted to get to. Where is it? Here's one from Jeff. He says he's trading his solar panels for Tesla batteries. So there you go.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that might have been a little dig at, remember when David Schwartz famously sold his
Ethereum for
his Ethereum,
yeah.
which at one point, I guess it would have gone up to like $40 or $50 million or something like that, or maybe 80 million.
Yeah, I can't remember what price he sold them at. He sold his Ethereum. It was like double digits. I think it was like $18 or $40 or something like that per Ethereum. I think he sold it at something like that, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, and so that basically all that does is like powers your water heater and powers maybe it's just not as good. So I was he's having a little bit of fun there. We saw this one here from Darren Jormo. He says SPF is just dumb. What's wrong with Kevin O'Leary? Kevin O'Leary's trying to I've seen that conversation start to change a little bit as he gets more interviewed. And we predicted here, Jeff and I had said that as it gets further away, you're going to see him kind of like come off that, he's a great guy, to, it doesn't really, it may not all make all that sense. I wanted to, we talked about the World Cup. I wanted to talk about this, but this is another cool NFT project that, we've had on the show as well, but the Unchained Elephants. But what's cool about it is they actually have a World Cup edition. So you can get your elephant. I'll scroll down here at some of these. And I have one from the US, one of these, but you can see that they're kind of randomized. There's different backgrounds and stuff, but I just thought it was fun to something so specific, especially about the World Cup. I was pretty excited this time around because the US men's team didn't make it last time, but there's Canada and some other countries and just a whole bunch of them right there. And this is offered up on here. I'll throw this in there if anyone's interested, but if you guys are World Cup fans, I'll throw this in the chat there, but I just thought it was really a lot of fun, man, and really cool. And they also made one for Jeff and I. I don't have that handy right now, but we had one just for Jeff and I. They made some custom ones, and that was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. Actually, I've just checked on Twitter and just seen actually David Schwartz has replied back to somebody and said, a private ledger is a ledger that operates on many of the same principles as a public blockchain, but has administrative functions and a party that has the legal right to operate it as they choose. It can have wrapped versions of assets like BTC, XRP, and ETH if desired. So yeah, I mean that's the point, right? Is that it's with a private ledger or a side chain, the whole point being is that you kind of have more control over it, and that's kind of the point, right? Is that certain entities are not that comfortable with running their stuff on a completely public ledger, right? So this is a kind of a halfway between, is that they get to use the same technology, but get to kind of basically configure it in a way that keeps it a bit more private for them.
Got it. I just wanted to segue a little bit because I saw this promo earlier. I didn't see the whole thing, but I thought we could watch it together. But this is Good Morning America, which is a morning show here in the States.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on with this guy? So is he going to do another interview? Can you guys hear this?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah.
How did he go from crypto hero to crypto supervillain?
Today, a lot of people look at you and see Bernie Madoff.
GMA tomorrow, Sam Bankman-Fried, one-on-one with George Stephanopoulos. What happened to the billions people invested with him?
What is the talent that you have that convinced people they should invest billions of dollars?
He was on top of the world.
You got all these celebrities. You did it in a big way.
Yeah.
Have you gotten calls from any of the celebrities who endorsed you?
But now,
Are you worried about going to jail?
and what led to this?
That's a pretty stunning admission.
The breaking new interview tomorrow on.
So there's another new interview, Matt. There's a breaking new interview where he's going to go on there. And the funny thing is that interview today, he was like this the whole time looking down, and like that's just not. It's like, if you get any kind of meeting coaching, media coaching at all, one of them is not looking down the entire time. So it just doesn't look good. Like we're having a conversation, and I'm looking down like the whole time. It's bizarre to me.
It is, and that's what kind of makes me lead to this kind of thing of I don't know how much of it is genuinely malice of what he's done versus kind of this schoolboy kind of like disconnect from reality. I won't say it's naivety as such, but it's kind of like. I do think that he's just kind of gone like one step, and then kind of like looked back behind him and gone, oh shit, right? And now I'm in trouble. So.
Something like that. Hey, there's another question here for you, Matt. This one comes in from Lee Mira. He says, I was reminded of XPoP, XRP proof of payment. Seemed to have a terrific use case. Do you know if it's still in development?
It was created as a proof of concept as far as I'm aware. So it was created by Barath, the XRP Ledger Foundation, and Vitsa and Richard Holland and that for Apex a year ago, and it was a proof of concept, right? I don't think it's ever been used in any commercial fashion. So what XPoP was, proof of payment is that the use case is something like a vending machine that doesn't have an internet connection, but needs to be able to prove that you have made a payment such that it should be able to dispense you, the soda or whatever it is that you've bought, right? Now, if it doesn't have an internet connection, how can it know that you've made the payment? And so the idea behind XPoP is that on my phone that does have an internet connection, I can make a payment to the vending machine on the XRP ledger, and what XPoP does is then take that payment transaction and wrap it up with everything that's needed to cryptographically prove that that transaction has happened, and then basically convey that to the vending machine via a series of QR codes. And it uses like an animated series of QR codes because you couldn't fit all that data in one QR code. So it shows a series of whatever it is, 10 QR codes or something in sequence that the vending machine has a little scanner on, can scan, read the QR code, and then has enough information to be able to prove that the transaction happened, so it should be able to dispense the POP. The big misconception is people believe it means that the XRP ledger can run offline or without an internet connection. It's not. The XRP ledger itself is still, it requires an internet connection to work. It's still working. It's still connected to the internet. Your phone still needs to be able to access the XRP ledger and access the internet to access the XRP ledger in order to make the transaction. The bit that happens offline is the proving, right? So it's kind of like I go into a shop, I buy a soda, I use my debit card, all that transaction happens. They print out a receipt, right? I get a receipt from the till. I can then go back home and I can say, hey, Chip, see this receipt? That proves I bought a Coke, right? And you can look at that receipt and go, yeah, I trust that receipt. And then what XPoP does is effectively add some cryptographic verification to that receipt. So the analogy would be when that receipt was printed, the shopkeeper signed it, right? And stamped it officially or something like that, whatever, right? So that when I show you the receipt, you're like, I recognize that signature. I know that's from the shopkeeper. So I know that that transaction must have happened, right? Matt couldn't have forged that receipt. That receipt's got the signature of the shop owner on it. So I can prove that Matt paid for that drink, right? So that's
interesting.
What is. Yeah, it's a really interesting, but I mean, it was done as a proof of concept,
right?
It's very interesting, but I don't think it's been used in any way commercially at all.
So, question for me is, where do you stand on CBDCs? Jeff and I have talked extensively about CBDCs. And let me kind of narrow that question down as far as not in the broad sense, like, hey, is it a good thing, but the programmability, the ability for a centralized entity to basically program the fact to say, like, okay, well, let's make it like, so and so likes ice cream, but you're not going to be able, it's not going to be able to be used for that type of ice cream, and it's a ridiculous thing, but we can kind of like pull that back and see what that'd be. But I don't like your views on football, Matt, and the fact that you're hail from the UK and you're not a football fan doesn't make a lot of sense for me. So I'm going to go ahead and cut you off of whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comparisons that have been made to things like China's social credit system and a lot of kind of Orwellian kind of Big Brother style kind of surveillance with CBDCs, and like you said, the programmability that I receive my a tax rebate or a stimulus check or something like that. I receive some kind of payment and it has an expiry date on it, or it can only be used in certain series of vendors or whatever, right? Now, in theory, we've had that functionality for a long time, right? Like a check has an expiry date if you give somebody a check, right? You can have a voucher that you give to somebody and you say, okay, well, this voucher's only, it's a $100 voucher, but it's only good for, this chain of stores or whatever. So we've kind of had some of that functionality before, but not in this widespread way. So yeah. I think that there is a reason for people to have some cause for concern about CBDCs, because they do enable that kind of functionality. I tend to always balance off most of these things with the fact that most governments are fairly incompetent, and I can't believe that they would actually manage to implement anything like this in any significant fashion in any time soon. That's not to say that it won't come, but I think a lot of people that are kind of running around screaming, "Oh, CBDCs are going to take over the world and kill us all," are, I don't quite subscribe to that level of
well, not kill us all, but I always worry about centralization, because because throughout history, through the annals of time, if we look at how this works, it's always like, yeah, that's possible, but it's probably not going to be used. And then Canada happened like last year, and then bank accounts were shut down, and people have pointed out that, well, that was always the availability to do something like that. But I think what scares everybody is the whole idea of a social system, facial recognition cameras, the AI, the machine learning, that's going to step all this stuff up to another level, where the sheer programmability of itself, I think, is one thing. But when you incorporate all these other technologies into it, and you get that AI, and you get that machine learning, and you get that facial recognition and that social system, now you can pinpoint what people are doing. And then it makes more sense to be able to, well, we're going to then, but on a grand scale on social planning, we think about, we think about not social planning, but central planning. We think about central planning. It's never worked because it's chaotic and it's too difficult when you start dealing with, millions of people, let alone tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. You'd have to use some sort of AI or something else in there, right?
No, and I think the thing being is all those things you've described don't require a CBDC to happen at all, right? It's like,
no, it's understood, but I'm saying that
when people talk about like surveillance and stuff like that, it's like the one you should be most afraid of is like your supermarket, right? If you look back, I mean, in the UK, for example, there's 4 major supermarkets that probably know way more about me than any government does, right? You hear these stories about supermarkets suddenly sending you through vouchers for, nappies, diapers, right? And suddenly like, well, why are you sending me a picture? Why are you sending me diapers? It's like, because they've worked out that, your wife's pregnant or whoever's pregnant,
Yeah, yeah.
before you even did, right? Kind of thing, because they've noticed that you've started ordering more peanut butter than usual or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
That, suddenly you started getting weird cravings, right? And you're ordering, your wife's ordering peanut butter and pickles, and suddenly they're like, wait a minute, okay. So, something's up. Exactly. So the supermarkets, I mean, the supermarket knows everything I buy and probably knows way more about me and is very much incentivized to know that, because they can obviously sell me more stuff. The more they know about me, the more stuff they can sell me. If they know that, hey, he's going to be watching the World Cup, then they know they can sell me, World Cup special deals or whatever, right? Oh, I'm going to want to buy a whatever now is 80-inch TV because the World Cup's coming up or whatever, right? So, the more they know about you, and this goes back to, like Coyle and Stefan Thomas's whole thing about advertising and breaking the advertising model through web monetization. It's all along the same vein. Is kind of like they know a hell of a lot more about you. So between things like the supermarkets, between like whatever tracking I have on my phone, the fact that I, voluntarily post stuff on whatever Twitter or Facebook, or, we're here talking about stuff now. I think CBDCs are kind of like the least of our worries, right? It's in that regard.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm still not a believer.
They're going to track us. If they're going to cut off our funds, they can already do that through the bank accounts, right? So
that's normalizing. That's normalizing the whole idea of centralization, centralized control.
Right.
But
I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's good. What I'm saying is that CBDCs, I don't think are get us that much further down this nasty path than all of the other things added up together anyway. So it's not that I'm saying I'm not worried about them, but what I'm saying is that there's a lot of people that think, oh, CBDCs are going to be, like this massively dangerous thing. I'm not saying they're not, but what I'm saying is that there's a whole lot of other bits and pieces that add up to that anyway in the first place, right? So,
exactly. Well, a good example of that is where you've normalized this whole idea of giving up. People are like, I don't want to give up, any personal information. But here's a good story. So it's Halloween here. I got to run out 2 days before. I walk by a center display and I'm like, 2 for $1. Cool. I grab 4 bags, right? And I walk up to the register and I self-swipe it and I do blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait a minute, this is full price. Why am I paying full price? And the guy's like, did you put your phone number in? I was like, I didn't. He goes, you got to start over and put your phone number in. I'm like, okay, I'll give you my phone number because I'm going to save some money. So that's the whole idea, is like, it's like, what are we willing to give up and what are we already giving up? Because we get a little bit of benefit out of it, just a little bit, right? So I pay half price and I'm like, okay, so that I was in there on that day, that time, I bought that candy and what else, and then you're off to the market. Solomon had a good question here. He wanted to know why did you leave Bittensor, and is it still a valid project?
Yeah, it's still a valid project. It's still interesting. I'm still following it. I still actually have a node running on Bittensor. So the reason I left was just basically my contract came to an end. I was hoping it would go on for longer. They had VC funding that they just received, and when we went, I started working with them. They then went back and looked at their budget and said, actually, maybe we've been a bit overzealous with our spending, so we're not going to renew the contract and go further, which is a shame because it was a good team. But I'm very much enjoying it. Protocol
I appreciate that. That's a really honest answer too. And I remember we had you on here, really cool project, and I hope they succeed because it's a really, and who knows what happens in the future. Ray Run said, Matt, please host every show. Great content. So I appreciate that. And it's funny because when I reached out to you, I'm like, hey, I want you to come on, but I want you to co-host for Jeff, and where you and I will just shoot the the proverbial shite, if you will, just to kind of and talk about it and bring some positivity too, because there's so much negative stuff out there. You got a guy out there running around, shooting his mouth off, and everybody just can't believe it. But meanwhile, there's a whole world that keeps opening up and keeps getting bigger and bigger. And what's available here is just phenomenal. So,
oh man, let me tell you about Lisbon, right? So I was in Lisbon for 2 weeks. I told you at the start this epic journey that I went on. Started.
Lisbon's great, isn't it? Man, I love Lisbon.
Fantastic city. I loved it. It's the first time I've been there, and so at Protocol Labs we have this thing every year called Lab Week. And Protocol Labs is completely decentralized, has been for like 8 years, right? So like pandemic and lockdowns, not much has changed in regards to the structure of the company. It's like we don't even like have a pretense of a headquarters or anything, right? People are everywhere. So every year they have a big get together, and they organized it this year to kind of coincide with some events are already happening in Lisbon. So there was a blockchain week, there was ETH Lisbon that was happening there. And so over a series of about 2 weeks, there were something like 30 events happening. Wow. I mean, the calendar was just insane. Wow. 30 events around Protocol Labs. This is not counting. So like Solana Breakpoint happened like the day after. There was some events that happened like the day before this 2 week period. But there was Phil Lisbon, which was the Filecoin Lisbon thing. There was IPFS Camp. There was a event called Computer Over Data Summit that happened. Lotus, which is the name of the software, that one of the main bits of software that runs Filecoin. So there's a project called an event called Lotus and Friends. There was a engineering working group summit. There was the ecosystem working group summit. There was about, like I said, about 30 different events. There was parties happening, different nights and everything. It was intense, but there was just so many people there that were there, building stuff. And this is one of the things that I love about, and it was the same thing that happened with the XRP ledger as well, especially now with all the NFT projects, right? I just can't keep track of what's going on. And because it's decentralized, you don't know somebody's building on something until they do it and they tell you, right?
It's exactly, yeah.
You've got no idea when somebody says, can you make, one of the last things I was doing at Ripple was trying to create a directory of all the projects that are building on the XRP ledger. Just what would sound like a simple task is actually really difficult. Now at Protocol Labs, we've got a directory of a whole bunch of companies and individuals that are building on it. But even that is kind of incomplete because there's ones that we just don't know about till suddenly they turn up and they're like, hey, we're building this really cool thing on top of IPFS. And you're like, oh, wow. Right. And
it must have just been like just a kid in a candy store, all the great stuff, especially you being a coder, a builder. Oh, yeah. And see, like, this is a lot what people are missing. So the fact that you're recreating this, and this is happening in one city in Europe at one particular time, and it's happening quite often in other cities too. This is not just like a one-off event, right? This is something that's, people are building all over the place. And this is what I sometimes think we lose sight of, is the fact that the builders are continuing to solve real problems and real use case. And that's really what the conversation started off tonight was. That's what it's all going to be about. At some point, the other ones that, even the ITT token or that is that what it was called? The whatever it was, the for FTX, it had zero use case. They had chance, they had use case to it, but other than just being something they would hedge against, that's all it was. I wanted to put this up too. Moneybags, not Bob, said, "Hey, Matt, is XRP used in any way moving BTC on XRPL?"
Well, yeah, it's used to pay the fees. So, Bitcoin is available as a token on the XRP ledger, as is Ethereum, as well as a number of others. They're all, what are known as originally were known as IOUs, what we now generally just call tokens within the industry, and companies like Spend a Bit. So Jay, who's based in Toronto, and his team have actually built a whole wallet around the ability to move Bitcoin around on the XRP ledger. So XRP is used to pay the fees. Still, when you do a transaction, you still need XRP to pay the fees, and it will be used again as a bridge currency for trading in and out of Bitcoin if you go to other currencies as well. I was just looking. Sorry, I'm just looking over the side here. I was just looking to try and find. So we had a hackathon so I'm involved in a thing called the Filecoin Virtual Machine, which is where it is that way up there. And Filecoin Virtual Machine, we just had a hackathon with a group called ETH Global, and it was a virtual hackathon. And I'm trying to find the actual numbers here for how many people were involved, but it was like there was something ridiculous, like was it 400 entries? Wow. I think it was. 400 entrants, and we had 110, I think it was, submissions.
Usually it's like 20 or 30, maybe if you're in a good day.
No, yeah. Yeah, so 400 participants, and we had 110 submissions.
Holy
right?
cow.
So that's one in 4. Now, normally they get about 1 in 5 as a benchmark. So we beat that, which was amazing, and that was all built on this thing, the Filecoin virtual machine, which allows you to run smart contracts, Ethereum style Solidity smart contracts on Filecoin. And we've been launching this kind of on the testnet incrementally. And so the latest bit of functionality kind of like landed like days before this hackathon. Now, this hackathon was 1 weekend. That was 110 entries that were created between Friday and Sunday.
Did you have winners? Did you have like a first?
Yeah. So we had a whole series of winners. We had some funds we put in there as well. There was $20,000 worth of funds, prize funds, if I remember right, something of that order of magnitude. So yeah, but there's just loads and loads building, right? And a colleague of mine, Sarah, at the moment is at ETH India, and we've got a parallel event running called Phil Bangalore. And she was saying it was insane. She was there. She did a keynote about FEM, and then alongside Juan Bene, the CEO of Protocol Labs, and then she was there talking to developers. And I spoke to her this morning, and she said it was insane. She was literally stood there for 3 hours, nonstop, developers queued up, coming to talk to her.
Insane.
About what with questions about what they were building. So yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that all this FTX stuff, okay, fine, but behind the scenes, people are still building, right? I mean, and building massively. And whether that's all the projects that are happening on the XRP ledger and things like, the AMMs are coming out, that's coming up soon. And, all the NFT projects now that XLS20 is live, or whether it's like the stuff that, I'm involved with now with Filecoin, or whether it's like Bittensor, they're building, right? So it's, there's just loads and loads going on. I mean, I'm getting a lot of LinkedIn requests coming in from recruiters saying, hey, we're looking to, hire developer advocates and heads of DevRel and stuff like that are coming in. I'm getting several emails.
Fast and furious.
Yeah. So
so anyway, I just wanted to say, I know we went a little bit over here today. So yeah, there's one guy, he's excited. Yeah. So I wanted to say thank you for coming in here tonight and really, having a good time,
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me, Chip. It's great. I've come on here before as a guest a few times. It's great to kind of sort of co-host. Okay, I didn't quite, we didn't quite do the
hosted, man. We co-host. We talked about the stories. We talked about all all the good stuff. So I just wanted to give you the last word as we kind of like take it out of here, as we kind of like head on down the road. But what do you want to leave everybody with tonight?
Again, just reiterate, people are building, right? Things are being built. No matter what network you look at, whether it's on the XRP ledger, where it's on Filecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever, people are still building. So just keep building.
Keep building, keep walking one step after the other, keep moving in that direction. If you got an idea, get it to the right hands, get a developer, don't think it's a silly idea. Just, part of it's building and getting to that next step. So I want to thank you as always coming on here. A great friend of the show. It was cool to meet you. I can't believe it's a year ago already, but it's been a year. But hang out after we get out of here. I'm going to play the old outro because a lot of people have been requesting it and they say it's more soothing. They say the other one's a little too upbeat. So I'm going to play that one as we get out of here. But hang on and we'll debrief after the show in the green room. Guys, thank you again. Like, subscribe, click that notification bell. Tell your friends about this, about On the Chain. And that's it from Matt and Chip. We are out. See you guys on the next one. Later.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.